Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Ome JavaScript. In one of the previous episodes, we have covered the fundamentals of Material UI version 5. And in this episode, let's make use of that knowledge to build a practical project, which is a homepage clone of Airbnb. I happened to see the Airbnb website when I was trying to book a holiday, and I fell in love with the UI. It's kick-ass, it's simple, but it's fantastic. So I thought, why not give it a shot of building the UI of Airbnb homepage. So this is the actual website, and this is the clone which we'll be building in an hour or so. From a fixed header and footer with scrollable middle portions, as well as a predominant flexbox based design with scrollable tabs, from a customized CarouselCard which can be scrolled, and the design being completely responsive, we touch upon a lot of Material UI components and customization of these components. So we don't have any time to waste. There is a lot to be taught and a lot to be learned. Let's jump straight into the content. Let's start by installing the three important things. 1. The Create React app. 2. The Material UI with its dependencies. And 3. React icons. So let's jump to the terminal and let's say npx create react app react MUI Airbnb clone, and once that's installed, let's cd to the folder and install the Material UI package, which we can copy from here. Let's paste it here. Let it be installed. And once that is getting installed, let's go to React icons, copy the package, paste it here, and let that be installed as well. Let's open up the code in Visual Studio Codebase or respective IDE. Let's go to app.css, clear out the styles here. Let's go to index.css, clear the styles from here as well. And I decided to use a font called Railway from the Google Fonts. So let's copy the import from here. Let's paste it here. And along with this, I'm setting the HTML and body styles for height 100 view height and overflow hidden. So that sets the basic styles for index.css. Within the src folder, I'm creating a folder called themes, and within this folder, I'm creating a component called app theme provider .js. Since I have installed a package called ES7 React Redux React Native snippets, I get to use shortcuts to scaffold components. So if I type RAFCE, this scaffolds a bare minimum functional component for me. Let's import a few things from the Material UI package. Let's import something called a create theme function and a theme provider component. And I'm taking this theme provider component and replacing the div with that. I'm making the functional component accept a prop so that I can do prop.children from within the theme provider component. And since I know that theme provider will accept a property called theme, let's create an object called theme. And let's call the create theme function. Let's pass in the theme to the theme property. The create theme function accepts a configuration object. And within this configuration object, I can say typography and I am configuring the typography for the entire material UI components. So I'm saying all variants. So the moment I say all variants, if you go to the typography and see, there is a lot of variants: H1, H2 to H6, subtitle 1, subtitle 2. So if you take a look at this, these are all the variants. And the moment I say all variants, whatever style I am providing here is made applicable to all these individual variants. So I'm saying the font family be railway, which is the new font which we have installed in the index.css via the import. I'm saying text transform to none and font size to 15. And right under the typography object, let's add a palette object. So within the palette object, I can say we can configure the primary as well as the secondary colors within the palette. So here I am saying let the main color be gray of 700, and for the secondary, let the main color be pink of 500. So this configures the color palette with the primary as well as the secondary colors set as gray and pink. And under the palette, let's configure the material UI components. So here I am saying the moment you type M, this will display all the material UI components which you can customize. So here I am saying I need to customize MUI typography. So instead of we manually passing properties like SX with specific values, I can configure it here so that this gets applied wherever you are using the MUI typography component. So here I am saying I need to configure the default props of SX, which we used to pass individually before. I'm saying PX. So the padding X should be set to 1 throughout. Let the variant be set as subtitle 2 and the text transform should be set to capitalize. So wherever I am using the MUI typography component, these properties, these default props are automatically passed to the MUI typography component. So I don't need to explicitly pass in again and again. Similarly, just like we have configured MUI typography, I am saying MUI stack. Since we are using the stack component everywhere in the application, I am saying its default properties should be set as SX to be PX to be 2, PY to be 1. Let the spacing be set as 2 and the direction to be set as row. Moving ahead, under the MUI stack, I'm saying MUI paper is set with default props of elevation 0 so that I have a flat look rather than a raised look. Under the MUI paper, let me customize MUI link and I'm setting it to the default props property be set as SX with an object of color. So here I can say, so instead of passing a value like this or a hex code, I can say theme pointing to theme dot palette dot primary dot main, which in turn points to this value, so that this color gets applied by default for all the links. So under the SX, I am saying, since this is a link, I am saying underline. I don't want any underline. So the value is set to none. And under the MUI link, let's configure MUI button, and the default props be set as size to be small, padding set to 0, disable ripple to be true, so that whenever you click the button, there is no ripple effect. That's disabled throughout. And by default, the variant be set as text. And for MUI tab, I'm saying let the default props having disable ripple set to true, so that if we go to the demo, the button as well as the tabs, both when you click, it doesn't have the ripple effect. That's disabled by default throughout the application. So that is customizing the themes for the typography, palettes, as well as components. Now within the themes folder, let me add a new file called common themes.js. So within the common themes.js, I know that since I'm using a lot of flexbox based classes and styles, I'm just collating all the common styles which I'm using throughout the application into one file called common themes.js. So if you notice, this is nothing but an object which has got a bunch of flexbox styles. Since we often use display and justify content, or display, justify content and align items together throughout, rather than writing this again and again and again, I just collated them into common themes.js. So for you, just go to the GitHub repo and copy the common themes.js and paste it into the file here directly. You don't need to write it by hand. So apart from a few styles where we have a custom carousel style, where I have slightly customized the carousel dots which we use in the carousel, which is something here. So the default color by default is blue one. So I've just customized it to match our theme. So I've just customized the color and the background color to match our theme. So all styles have been collated into the common themes.js, so that later throughout the application, we don't need to sit and write the individual display on access. It should be none. From MD onwards, it should be block. So there would be a lot of repetition. So to avoid that repetition, I just took the entire styles into one single file and reuse this file throughout the application. So once the style related housekeeping things are done, let's go to the application and start by designing the header. So let's plan the header. So I'm roughly dividing the header as the logo, which is this one, the location search component, which is this one, and profile settings component, which is this one. And the whole header is a flexbox. So if you consider this as flexbox and the three component within, this would roughly be a flexbox with justify content between. So how I remember these things is I go to the csstricks.com, a guide to flexbox, and I visualize the layout as something like this. So I wanted the justify content to be space between, so that this is our logo component, this is our location search component, and this is our profile and search component. So that's how I'm planning to design the header. Let's go step by step. Let's jump into the editor. Let's create a folder called components, and within the component I'm saying logo.js. So let's start with the logo.js. I'm saying RAFCE. This will scaffold me a functional component to begin with. Let's import all the material UI related components and React icon which I'll be using for this component. So we have box as well as typography and FA Airbnb and my common styles and our pink palette style which I'll be using within the logo. So once the icons as well as the components that needs to be used is imported, let's take this div out. I'm saying box, which will help us apply the styles for the wrapper. I'm saying SX is equal to, we have the flex center which we have imported from common style. So this will essentially be giving us the flex center. So display flex, justify content center and align item center. So this style would be applied here. I'm saying FA Airbnb is our component logo for Airbnb. I'm saying it should be of size 40 and the color be pink of 500. So this is the exact same color that we have provided in the app theme provider's secondary main. So this is the same color. So I'm saying the icon should have a size of 40 and the color of pink. And I'm saying the typography, by default, a set of default props would have been applied to the typography since we have configured the same here. But on top of that, if you need to customize further, we can still provide SX equal to an object. I'm saying margin left should have 1 unit. Color, I'm saying instead of a hex value, I'm using the functional style syntax and saying it should give me theme dot palette dot secondary dot main. So the typography color should be whatever which is defined within the secondary dot main object. And I'm saying the font size be 20px and font weight be bold. And by default, let the component be an H3. So within the typography, I'm saying let the text be Airbnb. So this wraps our logo component. Now, before moving further, I'm not a fan of having dot dot slash deeply nested folder structure. So to avoid that, we can have a small hack by using something called a tsconfig.json file. And within the file, I'm saying let the compiler options have a base URL pointing to the SRC with the include property set to the SRC within this array. So what this essentially means is that please start looking from within the SRC folder, so that if I have to point to themes, I can start by themes / common themes, which is what I am doing here in the logo. So I'm not doing dot dot slash this syntax, but rather I'm saying themes slash common styles, because the tsconfig.json will start looking into the folder structure from the src. So we can confidently use the component slash whatever within, or themes slash common themes, or themes slash app theme provider. So that helps us by avoiding the nested folder structure hierarchy. Now the next step is, let's create a header component so that we can put the logo component within the header component. One small change that I need to fix is the name of the file here being common styles instead of common themes. That was a small typo from my side, I apologize. So once that's set, let's check the logo.js. Yes, the theme name is theme slash common styles, so that's fine. Let me create a component called header.js. Let's scaffold by saying RAFCE. So it scaffolds functional component. Let's have all the imports which we need. So we have the box and the container from Material UI. We have also imported the logo.js, and we are importing few styles from the theme slash common styles here. So once that is set, let's return a box having its sx property set to an object, having d display flex, a min height of 70 units with a border bottom set to 1px solid hash triple d. So within the box, I'm saying I need to use the container component, which takes a max width property set to XL, so that once it reaches about 1200, it starts to center the content rather than expanding towards the full viewport. And within the container, I'm saying let's have a box set to SX having an object with flex between center, a min height of 70, and a px set to 4. And within the box, I'm saying I need to put the logo component. So once the header is done, let's move to app.js and apply the header into the app.js. Let's go to app.js. Let's have a cleanup of this component first. So let's take everything out. I know that I'm not using the logo.svg, so let's take out as well. Now let's import the components which we need, which is the box and CSS baseline. Once we use CSS baseline, so it kind of normalizes the styles for the application. So let's start with react.fragment, because I know I'll be having multiple child components within this React fragment. So let's start by first injecting the CSS baseline as the first component before any of the other components. After which, let's have the box having an SX property set to an object with display set to flex, flex direction set to column, height set to 100 view height. And within the box, I'm saying, let me have a box within which please have the header component. So let's import the header component from component/header, and let's use the header component within the box. Let's go to the terminal and run npm run start. It should spin up a server. And if you go to localhost 3000, we see that the logo is getting rendered, but I'm not seeing the styles. Why? Now that is because we have the app theme provider with all the configurations set as expected, but we are yet to wire up the app theme provider into the index.js. So let's copy the app theme provider name. Let's go to the index.js. Let's import the app theme provider. I know that I'm not using report web vital, so let's take that out. Let's take it out, make it simpler. So instead of the React strict mode, let's wrap the app component using the app theme provider. So if things go well, now I see that my logo component is rendering with the railway font as expected. Let's focus on the next component, which is the location search component. Now, just by looking at the design, I know that this is something which can be done using this stack. So if you go to the Material UI React stack documentation, here we have an example with some items having dividers. Now, if I can customize this, I can get the look of something like this. So that's the idea behind using stack. Let's go to the components folder. Let's create a component called LocationSearch.js. Use RAFCE to scaffold the functional component starting point. And within the component, I'm saying let's import all the required Material UI components as well as React icon fonts. So I'm saying I need the button, I need the divider, stack, box, typography, and paper, along with React icons, the search circle sharp icon, and the pink from the material color, which I'll be using as the color here for the search icon. So once that is set, I know that there are 3 options for the choices, which is anywhere, any week, add guest. So to make the options dynamic, I'm just creating an array called choices, having 3 objects with ID as well as text, the text being anywhere, any week, and I know for the third option, there is an icon. So I'm just having an option called with icon set to true. So within the location search, let's take out the default div. Let's start by putting a paper. So paper, we can provide a default access, which is an object. The border radius is set to 20. Margin left is set to 15. And for this particular paper, I'm setting elevation back to 3 because I need that small elevation for the location search. So within the paper, now I can use the stack component and provide the SX set to an object with the border radius set to 20, padding left set to 2 units, and the divider set to the divider component of the material UI, which has the orientation set to vertical, and I'm saying this is a flex item. So this configures the stack, and I know within the stack we need to loop over the choices and display the individual button for anywhere, any week, as well as add guest. So here I'm saying let's have the choices array, and let's use the map function to loop over the individual choice. So here I am returning the button. So since we are using map, we need to provide a unique key for the individual components. So I'm saying choice.id, which is the unique key for each instance of the button. And within the button, I can have a typography component, and this typography component's sx set to an object with the color set to a function that says theme returns theme dot palette dot text dot primary, and the font weight set to bold. Within the typography, we can supply the choice dot text, and to provide the icon conditionally, just below the typography I'm saying if choice dot with icon, then show a box only if the choice has a with icon. So this box should have an access having an objects set to ml having 1 unit, mt having 1 unit, mr having 1 unit, within which we have the search icon called IO search circle sharp with the color set to pink of 500, which we have given on other areas, and the size of the icon set to 32. So that should wrap the location search component. So let's take this location search component and bring them into the header component. Let's go to the header component. Just under the logo, let's import the location search component, which happened to be imported a line below. So let's take the location search. So just below the logo, if I place the location search component, let's see how it looks like. So yes, since this is space between, so the logo occupies the left side, the location search occupies the right side, and by the time we have the profile settings, this would be moved towards the center because we have set space between. So once we have a third item here, the second item will move towards the center. So let's create the next item on the list, which is profile settings. Let's go to the component folder, create a new component called profile settings. Let's do RAFCE, which scaffolds out the functional component base. Let's import all the components which we are planning to use in this particular component. So let's bring in box, the link, button, stack, a few React components, and our utility styles. So once that's done, let's take out the div. Let's start by putting a box. I'm saying let the SX be taking the flex center, and within the box, let's first have a link. So the link has, for the time being, let's have an href of hash. I'm saying become a host. And right below the link, let's have a stack. And within the stack, let's have a button. And within the button, let's have a BS globe icon with the size of 24. And let's have one more button. Let's copy this button, paste it here, remove the unnecessary spaces. Let's first pass the SX with a border radius of 10. Let's have a border of 1 px solid hash triple D, which we have given on the other side. And within the button, let's have a stack. And let's have AI outline menu, which is something which we have imported here, with a size of 24. And let's have FA regular user circle. This also holds a size of 24. So that wraps up the profile settings. Now let's take this profile settings components to the header. Let's go to the header component. Let's import profile settings component here and use the profile settings component under the location search. Save it, and let's go to the local host. And right now we have the layout which we was hoping to get. So this is something similar to the original Airbnb and our project. So that is a good start. Now I notice that there is a lack of a few space here. So let's adjust that. So let's bring in the minimum height up to 90 instead of 70 and see if that helps. Yeah, so that really helps. Right now, if we resize the layout, we see that it's not responsive. So what we want something like this. So we want the logo, location search, as well as the profile settings on desktop layout. And the moment we hit the mobile layout, it should switch to a mobile search component. So that is what we are going to build in the next step. So let's go to the IDE. Let's create a component called MobileSearch.js. Let's do RAFCE so that it scaffolds the functional component base. Let's import all the required components here, and let's take out the div. Let's have our paper component with the component property set to form, because this is essentially a search and filter form. And let this also have an SX having padding set to 2px 4px, display set to flex, align items set to center, let it have a width set to 400, let it have a border set to 1px solid triple C, and have a border radius of 20. So once that is set, let's go into the paper component. So inside of that, let's have an icon button. Let the icon button have an SX set to padding of 10px, and within the icon button I'm saying FSearch, which is the icon which we have here. Let's copy this icon once more. Let's paste it. Let's have the second button have a type of submit, because this is a form, and upon clicking the button it needs to submit the form. So the only change being, let's use the second icon called VSE settings instead of the FSearch, and in between these two icons let's bring in the input base component, and this take in an SX of margin left 1 unit, flex 1, with a placeholder of where to. So this wraps up the mobile search component. I'm just clearing out the empty spaces. The next thing to do is to take this mobile search component to the header component. Let's import it here. Let's bring in the mobile search component under the profile settings. But let's do one thing. Let's create a box with an SX set to display on desktop. So this is a class which we need to use from our comment styles. So import the comment style. Let's have 3 of those. And let's put our logo. Let's put our location search. And let's put our profile settings into the respective boxes. And for the fourth one, the mobile search, let's have a box. This takes in an SX set to display, and I'm saying on XS, please have flex, and starting MD, let it be none, so that the mobile search is shown till MD, and from MD onwards this is hidden. So if all goes well, let's switch back to the UI. Yeah, so we have the mobile layout, and going into the desktop layout, we have the other layout. So the responsive header is working as expected. Now let's move to the next component. The next component which we are going to create is the Scrollable Options tab, which we are seeing here. For that, let's start with the data first. So let's jump into the IDE. Let's create a folder called data, and within the data, let's have a file called mock-data.js. So since our options tab is a bunch of text with some icons, let's create an array with a bunch of these things together. So I'm saying I imported a bunch of images. Everything is from React icons, different icons to match the options here. So all we have here is an array which contains a label that matches the label here and the icon for individual labels. So all we have is this array, and these are the icons which I have imported at the top. So this is something which you can copy from the GitHub repo so that you don't have to write it from hand. So once that is done, let's create a new component called options tab.js. Let's scaffold the bare base. Let's import the components which we need to use. So we have box, tabs, tab classes, individual tab, button, container, and a few React icons. And I'm saying from the mock data, we have the locations tab, which we have created here as well. So that sets the base. Now let's take out the return div here. Since this is a tab, we need to use state. So here I'm saying const. Let's have a value and a setter function called setValue. This is react.useState. Let's start with 0. I'm just having a slice of state to hold the selected options value. We are not going ahead with the full implementation, but just to satisfy the bare minimum requirements, I'm having a small slice of state. And once we hit the individual tabs, we need to handle the change. So I'm giving handle change equal to event new value. Let's call the set value and pass in the new value. And within the return, let's have the container, and this container should have a max width of XL. And within the container, let's start by putting a box having an SX set to an object containing display flex grow 1, padding on the x-axis. Let's say on XS there should be no padding, and from MD onwards it should have 2 units. The align items is set to center, margin top set to 2 units, margin bottoms set to 2 units. And within the box, let's start by having the tabs. So this tabs taking a value which is set to our slice of value here. It also needs an on change which is set to the handle change here. I'm saying the variant is set to scrollable. I'm also having an attribute called scroll buttons. And on top of that, let's have the SX to customize a few more styles. So here I am saying ampersand so whatever be the tab classes dot scroll buttons, if the button is disabled, if it has scroll buttons and if that is disabled, then just reduce the opacity to 0.3 so that if you reach the end and there is no more buttons to scroll to, it kind of grays out, indicating the user that, hey, there is nothing to scroll. It's the end of it. So within the individual tabs, now let's iterate through the locations tab. Let's map through it. Let's have the individual tab. I'm going to return individual tabs from here. And I'm saying, since this is a map, we need a unique key, which is tab.id. The icon set to tab.icon. And label set to tab.label. So this is a good start for our options tab. The next step would be taking the options tab to the app.js. So let's go to app.js. Let's import the options tab component which we just created. Let's put it under the header and see how it turns out. So let's go to our component. Yeah, so we have our optional. So we have our scrollable tabs working fine. Let's bring down to the mobile layout. It still looks pretty decent. There is one more thing that we need to add here, which is the filters. So let's add that as well. So let's go to our code. Let's go to the options tab. Under the tabs, let's have a button. This button is having an SX set to an object with display. I'm saying on access, please hide it. Don't need to show anything. And on MD, let it be set to block. Let the border be 1px solid #DDD. Let the minimum width be 90. Let the justify content be set to space between. Let the border radius be set to 2. Let the text transform be set to capitalize. I'm saying PY, padding on Y set to 1. Let the color be I can say theme dot palette dot text dot primary, and within the button let's introduce the FA filter with the text of filters. So if the wiring up is right, it should have the filter on the right hand side, which indeed we have. So if you go to the mobile, yeah, the filter is hidden. And if you come back to the desktop layout, we have the filters button. So that completes the options tab. And let's move to the next section, which is the most interesting section, the middle portion, where we have all the location cards with scrollable carousel in between. To implement the card carousel, I was initially looking for a lot of third-party libraries and plugins, but fortunately, when I was going through the documentation, somewhere deep inside, there is something called a stepper. And if you come down the options, there is something called a text with carousel effect, which has got something similar to what we want. So I thought, let's take this component itself so that this is already available within the React Material UI. Probably we need to install an additional package for the swipe, which isn't much of an issue, and the style customization. That is also within our hand. So let's do that first. So let's go to the terminal. Let's install npm install. What was the name of the package? react-swipeable-views. So I'm taking react-swipeable-views -- save. Let that be installed first. So during that time, let's do one more thing. Let's analyze the design. So this is a bunch of cards. For each options, we have multiple images to be shown. So let's create an array containing all these informations. Now let's start by populating the array, but before that we need to install one more package on top of the React Swipeable Views, and that is npm install React Swipeable Views utils -- save. So let's run that. While that is being run, let's jump to the mock data, and underneath our locations tab array, let's add one huge array. So this is nothing but some data with some images. There is nothing more onto it. So this is something which we can copy from the GitHub repo and paste it directly into the mock data. So let's go through one of it. It's nothing but an ID. The location image is an array, and this is the array which is being shown as you swipe from image to image, and some of the information that we show underneath the card. So that is all with respect to this array. So keeping that in mind, let's create a component called LocationCards. So let's have a component called LocationCards.js. Let's scaffold the bare minimum. Let's import the components which is required for this one. We have the grid as well as the box. So I've given the name here as locations, but to avoid confusions, I'm clearly mentioning or aliasing the name as card locations from the mock data. And let's have a state. So I'm saying const cards equal to react.use state of card locations. It's not a must. You can directly grab it from the import here as well, but just for the sake of having a state, I'm just holding it in a slice of state. So I'm saying if there is no array, return null. So there is nothing to be shown. Else, let's put a box first, and this box would be having an sx set to an object with mx set to 2 units. And within the box, let's have a grid. So this is the grid responsible for showing the individual cards. So I'm saying the grid is currently acting as a container, and the row spacing for the grid is set to 3, and column spacing is set to 3. And within the grid, I'm saying let's iterate through the cards. Let's map over the cards. So we have individual instances of location, and please return a grid with a key, a unique key of location.id. On access, it should have the full width. So it's being a 12 column layout, please expand fully so that there is only one single column. On SM, please show 2 items. On MD, I set to 4. So 4 into 3, 12. So show 3 cards, and anything more than MD, I'm saying LG, set it to 3 so that 3 into 4, 12. So show 4 items or 4 cards. Just to see if the values are coming fine, I'm saying location.location. And let's take these location cards and let's take it to the app.js. Let's copy the location cards and go to app.js. Right underneath the header and options, let's have a container. So import container from @mui/material/container, and let's have the container with max width set to XL, and let's have an SX set to MB, margin bottom of 3 units, within which let's import the location cards. Let's use it. Let's go to the terminal. Let's do npm run start. Let's see if the values are coming for the cards. Right now it still won't be a carousel, but it should be a good start. Yeah, so we have the individual items coming. So that is fine. Now we need to work on this to add the carousel so that we can have the full-fledged UI as something like this. Let's start by analyzing the carousel card before its implementation. So it has got a swipeable area. It has got an icon. It has a mobile stepper and the stepper dots. So we need to know the number of images so that we can display the number of dots accordingly. We need to track the active steps so that based on if you are in image 2 or image 3, the dots can be changed accordingly and the arrows can be set or disabled accordingly. So that is what we have in our plans. So let's implement that plan. Let's go to the components, create a CarouselCard.js. Let's scaffold the base using RAFCE, and let's bring the React components as well as the icons and custom styles that we are using. So box, mobile stepper, typography and the buttons, these are taken from the Material UI. These are the components that we use. We have some Material UI icons. We have a third-party library called react-swipeable-views, and it is this swipeable views package that helps us swipe using mobile. And if you are in a mobile, you can use the touch swipe as well. So to leverage that, we need to use this third-party package. We have some React icons for the heart and our custom styles, which we have. So let's scaffold it piece by piece, the functionalities. Let's bring in something called active steps. So that let's create a small slice of state called active step and an updater function, and let's set it to 0. So this essentially tracks the active step when we are swiping or clicking the left or right buttons. I know that the carousel can accept something called a location as a prop. So let's accept the location as a prop, and we need to know the max steps so that we can show the dots accordingly, and that's obtained using location_images.length. So if it is 4 images, the max steps is 4. If it is 3 images, the max step is 3. And to handle the swipe as well as the clicks, let's have some functions. So all these 3 functions does the same thing. When we click the next button or back button, it just updates the active step by calling the updater function and passing in the value. If it is next, it increments the active step by 1. If it is back, it decrements by 1. If you are swiping, it gives us the current step value, which we update it using the setActiveStepUpdater function. So once that is done, let's take out the div. Let's replace it with a box. So let's have a box with a class name of CarouselCard. Let this be there. We'll override some of the custom styles a bit later. So as of now, this acts as a placeholder. So that is fine. Let's have an SX set to an object with flexgrow set as 1 and position set as relative. And within the box, let's have one more box, and this box have an SX value set to fixed icon, which is one of our custom styles. And within the box, we have the FA Reg heart, which is our icon, which we see here, the FA Reg heart, whose size is set to 24 and its color set to #FFF, which is white. So underneath the box, let's iterate through the location images. So location.location_images. So first, let's make sure there is some images to look through. And if there is, then let's bring in the swipeable views. it is this component that helps us swipe between views and change the image from one to other using the mobile stepper. So let's have the swipeable views accept some properties. It accepts a property called axis. So we can say, please swipe through the x-axis, the index, so that it needs to know the current index, which we can provide using the active step slice of state, which we manage here. And once the index is changed, we need to update the active step, which we can do using the handle step change function we have. And there is also one property called enable mouse events, with which we can use our mouse to swipe between images. So within the swipeable views, we need to render the images. So let's do location.images.map. Let's loop through it for each step and index. Let's return a div So since we are looping over items, we need a key. So I'm saying key is equal to step.id, and within the div, let's have a box. So this time I'm saying the box should be rendered as a component image. We are using box, but please render as an image. The SX can be set to the carousel image. We have some custom styles for the image, so let's apply the custom styles. The SRC can be set to step.url, and since this being an image which needs the alt, we can do step.id. So this would be a decent start for the image. So below the swipeable views, let's have the mobile stepper. So right under the swipeable views, let's have the mobile stepper. With an SX set to one of our custom class called fixed bottom, within which we have the mobile stepper, which can be a self-closing component. The mobile stepper accepts a few properties. So here I'm saying SX equal to the background color set to transparent. It needs to know the steps which is available via max steps so that it can populate the number of dots accordingly. The position can be set to static. The active step can be set using our active step slice of state. There is a next button as well as back button which we need to populate. So the next button can be a button. So the button can take some properties of size set to small. On click, it should trigger the handle next. We should disable the button if active step triple equal to max steps -1, so that once it reaches the end, we no longer make the button enabled, so that we can only go back once it hits the last image. So Let's add a custom SX for the dots called carousel dot, which is a custom style for the dot. And let's bring in the icon for the same, which is keyboard arrow right. So it's a right arrow. Let's copy the entire piece, paste it here, and instead of the handle next, we have a handle back. So let's use the handle back, and the disable condition also changes slightly if the active step is 0. So if it is at the first image, then let's disable the back button. And instead of the right arrow, let's use the left arrow. So let's use the left arrow. So beneath the box, let's have the typography elements, which is the location, date, price, and the other section here. So let's have the box with a custom class set to flex between. Let's have 2 boxes, of which for the first one I am saying SX is set to margin top of 2 units, within which I need a typography component, and let the component be H3, and the content it should have is location.location. So please show the location here. Let's copy paste this twice, once for the date and once for the price. So here I am saying let it be H4, let this be H5, this would be location.days, this should be location.price. So for the next box we have here, let's have the same SX. So set the SX to empty2. So within that, let's have another box which holds a custom SX class of dflex, within which I am saying if the location is having an is new property, please display something, or else some other thing. So let's start by having a react.fragment because I have multiple child elements. So let's copy one of the typography components from here. Let's paste it here. Let this be an H5 and the text be new. And let's bring in the icon which we have seen on the other side, which is the star icon here, which is the AA field star of size 18. Let's copy the same piece and paste it here, and instead of the new, I'm saying this should be location.rating. So that completes the carousel card. Let's take the component name. Let's go to LocationCards. Let's import the carousel card, and let's use the carousel card instead of the location. So I'm saying I need the carousel card here, and this expects a location. So let's pass in the location here. So if the wiring is done right, we should see the cards as expected. So indeed we have the cards which can be swiped. So the card functionality and the typography, everything is working fine. but there is one small thing which is missing. So at the start, we have had a CarouselCard class. Now let's create a custom style sheet so that we can override some of the classes that we have here. So as of now, what we have is the mobile stepper being displayed right on load, which is not what we want. So if we take a look at the Airbnb site, only once we hover, we have the stepper arrows, and once we leave it, that's kind of hidden. So we are trying to replicate the same functionality here. So let's go to the components. Let's create a CarouselCard.css. So here we can override some of the custom styles to our choice. So here I am saying CarouselCard is the name of the class which we have provided here. This can be anything. It's just a hook. So notice the name. This is not a random name, but if you go to the React stepper component, if you come down to the mobile stepper API, here is a bunch of global class names which they have specified. So if we need to override any of these, we need to make use of the same class. And this is the class name which I have used here. So I'm saying CarouselCard, initially it should be the opacity is 0. And once on hover, its opacity should be 1. And the dot active. So the active dots should have a background color of white. So at this point of time, it is not white. So let's import the import dot slash CarouselCard.css. Let's save it. And once we hover, we have the image with the custom styles applied. So that's how you customize. You go even deeper into customizations of MUI components. Now we got the carousels working, but now we have a problem here. So if you try to scroll the page, right now this will not scroll because we have set the styles in the app.css or index.css that let the height be 100 ph, but then anything more overflow is hidden. So we will not be able to scroll it. To fix that, let's go to app.js. Let's take out the container. For the time being, I'm just putting it here. Let's have one more box. Yeah, so the box can take an SX where the display is set to flex. The flex direction is set to column. Flex grow is set to 1. Height is set to 100. And overflow Y is set to scroll. And let's bring back the content into the box. So once that is set, let's see if that helps the scroll. So yes, so we fix the issue. Now the only thing that is left to create is the footer. So let's go ahead and build the footer. Let's go to the components folder, create a component called footer, RAFCE, scaffolding the bare minimum for a component. Let's import the React Material UI components which we are using in this application. So we have paper, stack, link, box, button, and container from the Material UI package, and also BS Globe as well as the other icon from the React icons. We imported the common styles which we have in the themes folder. Now let's take out the div, and as usual, let's start with a box. So I am putting an array which contains some values. So privacy, terms, sitemap, and destinations are the 4 links that I'm going to put in my footers. So rather than hard coding them, I'm just putting it in an array and looping over it. So for the box, let's have the sx property take in an object which contains full width flex, which is one of our custom styles. Let's have a border top set to 1 px solid #DD. And within the box, let's have our container to center the entire footer. Set the max width to XL. And within the container, let's have one more box, and this box have the SX property taking flex between center, which is another custom style we have, and let the width be 100%. So once that is set, let's have a stack within and a paper. So this can have our link and the content. Before that, let's have the href hash and the content be 2022 Airbnb copyright. And under the paper, let's do footer links dot map of each link returning a paper which have a key set to link dot id, and within the paper let's have our link having the href set to link dot url and the content being link dot text. So that is one piece of it. Let's do the other piece where I'm having a stack within which we have a paper having the sx property taking a justify center custom class, within which we have a button. So this button in turn takes a box having an sx set to justify center with mr margin right of 1 unit, within which we have the icons. So let's have the PS globe icon with the size set to 24. And after the box, let's have English in brackets CA. So that is one button. Let's have one more button within which let's have $CAD, and the third button support and resources. So within the button, let's have a box and say this box takes in an SX where we spread our justify center along with margin left of 1 unit. Let's have our IO chevron outline having a size set to 24. So that wraps our footer class. Now let's take the footer to our app component. Let's go to app.js, import the footer. So let's do footer, take the footer and right under the box here, let's create one more box and let's use the footer and see how it comes out. So that comes out pretty well. And the only thing that's left to do is, let's go to the real Airbnb site. Let's resize the site. And once it hits the mobile layout, watch the footer. The regular footer goes off and it comes up with a footer menu. And the regular footer goes right under the cards. So let's bring it down to a mobile layout and it switches to a footer menu. And if you check the bottom portion, the footer, whatever we had initially, is coming right under the cards area. So let's go to the components folder, create a footer menu.js component, scaffold the component. Let's import all the required React Material UI components, icons, as well as the array which contains the data for the footer menu. So we have stack, button, box, typography, a bunch of icons from React icons, and an array which has few objects. So this is our footer menu. It contains explore, wishlist, as well as login with its own icons. So let's start by taking out the div. Let's have a box. Having an SX property, take an object that contains display flex, justify content set to center, flex grow set to 1. If you want, you can copy paste this into our common styles and create one custom class for it. That's up to you. Here, since this is a one-off kind of a style, I didn't take this to the common styles, rather I decided to put it within the box itself. So if I'm reusing the same 3 values somewhere else, I would have probably taken it into the custom common styles. So within the box, let's have a stack, and within that, let's have footer menu dot map of each item. Let's return a button with a key set to item.id, and within the button, let's have a stack which takes an SX property having an object containing justify content set to center, align items set to center. The stack itself has a few properties of direction set to column and the spacing set to 1 unit. And within the stack, let's do item dot icon so that we have the icons within the stack button. So just under the icon, let's have the typography component having the item dot text. And since this is stack with direction set to column, this will be one below the other. So let's take the footer menu to the app.js and see how it looks like on mobile layout. Let's take the footer menu component. Let's go to app.js and import footer menu component at the top. Let's come down just on top of the box here. Let's put another box, and within the box, let's give our footer menu, and let's give two classes for both boxes. So here I am saying SX, which takes a display, and the display takes in an object. Here I am saying on XS, let the display be flex, and starting MD, the display be none. And for our bottom box, let's use the XS with a display on desktop custom class. So let's see if this class is imported at the top or not. Seems it is not. So let's import from themes/common styles and display on desktop. So that completes our footer menu arrangement. Let's jump back to our application and see if it works or not. Let's resize our design from the desktop layout towards mobile and see if the footer switches from our regular footer to the footer menu. So if we come down, it switches to the footer menu, but I see a small problem with respect to layout. I was expecting to see the cards going down its number as we resize from the desktop to the mobile. So let's see what the issue is and fix it. So if we inspect, we could figure out that there was at some point it was showing 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items. So the layout wasn't looking good. So we could go to the SM and instead of 2, let's put 4 and see how it looks like. Yeah, so now this is good. So let's once more resize and see. So on desktop, 4 columns, 3, it holds the 3 columns. Then once it hits the mobile layout, it shows the single column. If we want, we can add the additional footer which was being hidden upon hitting the mobile layout. So we could take that footer and put into the main content right under the cards. So let's do that as well. Let's go to the components, create a new component called mobile footer, scaffold the bare minimum structure, and let's import all the React Material UI components as well as the icons. So let's import paper, stack, link, box, button, the icon as well as our custom style along with the array for our footer links. So we have privacy, terms and sitemap, and let's take out the div here, start with a box. So let's put a box Let the box component take in the SX property having border top set to 1px solid hash triple C, margin top of 3 units, padding top of 2 units, width set to 100%, and within the box let's have a paper, and within the paper let's have a button, and within the button let's have a box again having the SX taking in an object with justify center and margin right set to 1 unit, and within the box let's have our icon, so BS globe icon having a size of 24, and under the box let's have English CA, and under the button let's have the next button of $CAD that wraps this paper. So underneath this paper let's have a stack having the SX property set to an object with margin top of 2 units, and within the stack let's have a paper, this paper within which let's have a link having the href set to hash for the time being. Let's have the 2022 Airbnb copyright, and under the stack let's have one more stack, and this stack takes in an SX of MT2 within which let's have our footer links. So footer links dot map, for each link let's return a paper having a key set to link.id, and within which let's have one more link. So let's take that link from here having the href set to link.url, and within the content let's have link.text. So that will wrap up the mobile footer, and all we need to do is to take this mobile footer into the app.js. Let's take the mobile footer, go to app.js, import the mobile footer component, take this component and right under our location cards let's put a box within which let's have our mobile footer, but the box takes in an SX, an object where the display takes in another object of XS set to flex and MD set to none. So on smaller layouts, let's display the mobile footer, and once it hits the MD, please hide it. So to see if it is working or not, let's refresh the localhost and see if it is working. So currently we are on mobile layout, so we are seeing the mobile menu, And once we scroll down, we are seeing the copyright as well as the footer links. Once we expand it back to the desktop layout, we see the original footer and the mobile menu as well as the mobile footer has been hidden once it hits the MD breakpoint. So that wraps the tutorial for Airbnb homepage clone using React Material UI 5. It took me a bit more than an hour and a half, but there was content and concepts to be covered for that much amount of duration. I hope you have enjoyed making the project. I'll see you soon in another one. Do let me know if you have liked the project or not in the comment sections below. Thank you and bye-bye.